All right. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. In Genesis, we've gone over some very, very important things. We learned that the earth was recreated in how many days? 7. Good. He spent 6 days working, and the 7th day, God did what?
Rested.
He rested. That's right. In Genesis chapter 2, he talked about man a little more. Adam and his wife. How God made Eve out of Adam's bone, out of his rib. And we learned that God put Adam in a garden in what region? The Garden of Eden. Good. And God put 2 trees in the middle of that garden that Adam was not supposed to eat of. What were they? The tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They could freely eat of anything except for those 2 things, right? But they did. They did eat of what they shouldn't have done eaten. If you look on down at chapter 3 and verse 16, God is giving punishment to the serpent, and then to the woman, and then to Adam. Look at verse 16. We covered this one last time. The Bible says, "Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." And that's a part of the curse that God put over women. Is, women always say it's a man's world. We need the feminist movement right now wants to take over the country. They want to take over the world. Women ought to be in charge. Well, before the fall, maybe they could have had a part in ruling. But after the fall, it says right here, "Thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." And that's going to show up again in 1 Timothy. We'll look at that here in a minute. And unto Adam he said, listen here, God has given punishment to the serpent, and then he gave punishment to Eve. To the serpent he said, "Because thou hast done this." God was punishing the serpent because he beguiled Eve, right? Right. To Eve he said, "I will greatly multiply thy sorrow." He didn't say because she did anything, just told her what was going to happen. To Adam, here is what God says is the reason he's punishing him. Say, why did God punish Adam? What do you think? Why did God punish Adam?
He didn't do his job as a husband.
He didn't do his job as a husband. What if you ask anybody on the street, anybody in church, you say, what did Adam do that made God punish him?
Oh, he
took of the tree. That's the common answer. It's because he ate of the fruit, right?
Right.
Well, okay, that's true. He did eat of the fruit. What does God say is the reason that he punished him? Right here. Because thou hast done what?
Hearken to the voice of thy wife.
Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife. That's the reason mankind has fallen. Because one man listened to what his wife said and did it.
But not said that, Chris, go home, never live through
Yeah,
life again.
Men are not better than women. And women are not better than men.
Yeah.
And men are not smarter than women. Women aren't smarter than men. I don't believe that men are better at all. Here's what I believe. God has made men and women different. Just like he's made, and I could get put in jail, I guess, for saying that these days. But the Bible makes it very clear, and common sense makes it very clear, that a man is not a woman.
Amen.
And a woman is not a man.
Amen.
And a man has certain duties that a woman does not have. A man has duties to do that God didn't tell women to do. A woman has duties to do that God didn't tell a man to do. They have a different role in this life. Each person, a man and a woman, has one thing in common, as far as I can tell. They each have equal opportunity to earn rewards in heaven. Every woman in this room has just as good of a shot of earning rewards in heaven as any man in this room. Maybe even more. Because a man has to go out and deal with all the temptation. Women have temptations too. That's probably not right to say. Here's what I'm going to say right here. I'm going to get back to the verse. Unto Adam he said, "Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree. So the very first thing God accuses Adam of is, you did what your wife said. And obviously it's implied, and it was disobedience to me. You should have said no. You should have said, I'm not taking it, and you don't take it either, Eve. Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife. Genesis chapter 16, verse 2. We're going to look at something similar. I wouldn't emphasize this point if the Bible didn't emphasize it. Genesis chapter 16 and verse 2. We've got a story here where Abraham has been promised a child by God, and he doesn't have one yet. Sarah doesn't have the promised baby boy yet. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. So Sarah concocts a little plan. Hey, God promised us a son, and we haven't had one yet. Here, have a son with my handmaid, and we'll call it ours. Is that good, and is that right?
No.
No. Should Abraham obey and listen to his wife?
No.
No, but look what it says. Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. So we've got the first two mentions in the first 16 chapters of the Bible of a man hearkening to his wife. And the first man who hearkened unto his wife plunged mankind into sin. The second man who hearkened unto his wife created the Arab race. Ishmael. Not good. They can be saved just as much as you and I, but the history of Ishmael is attacking and trying to destroy the Jews. And the Ishmaelites in the Bible, Ishmael and his descendants, are where we get, I believe, the Egyptians, but the Saudi Arabians, the Iranians, the Iraqis, the Syrians, a lot of those Arabs who are not Jews. And those people who say, free Palestine, and what they mean is, let all us Arabs murder all those Jews. We hate them. That's what they mean. That came from from Abraham hearkening to his wife. You got to be careful. As a man, I don't believe it's a good practice to always listen and do what your wife says to do. Okay? What you have to do is have discernment. Sometimes your wife might have a great idea, something that you ought to do. And what you ought to do is pray about it, see if it's right, and then do it. But you ought to be very careful, because the first two times a man listens to his wife in the Bible, awful things happen. Be very careful. I've seen a few times in my life where I listened without discerning, and bad things happened as a result. So just be careful about that. Remember, as a husband, you are to guide and watch over her and protect her. And a part of that is when she has a bad idea, you got to let her know it's a bad idea, and we're not going to do that. Okay? Wives, your husband is dumb. I can tell you this because first-hand experience. The Bible still says what it says. We're the ones that God has put to rule. It says right there, the husband shall rule over thee. The husband is to be in charge. The man is to be in charge. And right now in the United States, that is considered hate speech. But what it is Bible truth. What it is age-old truth. 6,000-year-old truth from the Word of God that you should not give up on just because you're afraid to go to jail, or just because you're afraid your daughter or your son might think you're a bigot or turn you into the police. And women and men, you can ask my wife the next time she shows up with our baby. You can ask me. You can ask anybody who's followed it. There is no more blessed marriage than one that follows the book, where a wife submits and a husband leads. There is nothing more sweet than a man leading, following the book, and a wife following the book. There's nothing better. Genesis chapter 21, verse 12. When we're talking about the husband hearkening to the wife. After Sarah concocts this plan and they have the son Ishmael, it's a bad thing. It's a bad result, and it makes the household awkward because now Sarah has a son, Isaac, and she gets jealous of Hagar. And in chapter 21, verse 12, it says, God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad. I'm sorry, you need context. Sarai comes to Abraham and says, now that I've got a son, Isaac, I want you to cast out that first son. I want you to get him out of the house. And Abraham's now again faced with, well, should I listen to my wife? You know, last time I did, it didn't work out so good. So should I now? Because of the bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, here's God talking to Abraham, hearken unto her voice. For in Isaac shall thy seed be called. So here's a time when a man is told to hearken to the voice of his wife. So here's the lesson. If God tells you to hearken to the voice of your wife, you do. If God doesn't tell you to hearken to the voice of your wife, then you better discern whether you should or shouldn't. Exodus chapter 18 and verse 24. This is the last verse we'll look at on this subject. Exodus 18:24. While Moses was in the wilderness, he was supposed to be to the Jews instead of God. He was supposed to be the man in God's stead. They were supposed to go to Moses directly like they could go to God directly. But Moses started getting tired, and things started getting difficult dealing with millions of people. And so his father-in-law, Jethro, came and gave him some advice. His father-in-law, like his wife's dad, came and gave him some advice and said, hey, you take too much work upon yourself. You should, the modern word would be delegate. You should spread out the responsibility. You should set people up under you to help you. And right here in Exodus chapter 18 and verse 24, it says, so Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. And most preachers and teachers will get up and say, now that's great advice, and that's how we structure our church. We try to set everything up so that the pastor's not in. Well, right here in this case, Moses was supposed to be the one they went to instead of God. And he took some bad advice from his father-in-law, and it caused the Jews a lot of trouble because he hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law. Remember, men, you are responsible to hearken to God's voice. And when other voices come up, contradicting God's voice, you do not hearken. You can hear, but don't hearken. Back to Genesis 3:17. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. I want you to remember something here. Remember when the devil, at the beginning of this chapter, the serpent came to Eve. And Eve did some quoting of God's words, right? And if you remember, she added words to what God said. She took away words from what God said, and she changed words that God said. She did not quote God word for word. And I don't know if you knew this, but God cares about his words. The reason we believe the King James Bible is because this is the one book on the planet that doesn't change God's words. Listen to God. When Eve quoted God, she messed up words here and there and changed and added and took away. Listen to God quote himself right here. Of the which I commanded thee, saying, quote, thou shalt not eat of it. Look at Genesis 2:17. Halfway through the verse. Thou shalt not eat of it. Chapter 3, verse 17. Thou shalt not eat of it. Chapter 2, verse 17. Thou shalt not eat of it. Chapter 3:17. Thou shalt not eat of it. Chapter 2:17. Thou shalt not eat of it. He did not stutter. He did not miss one word. Word for word, I believe right there, he's emphasizing in front of Eve, here's how to quote my book. When God says something, what you are responsible to do is remember the words that he said. You are to remember the very words he uses when he talks to you. God quoted himself word for word right there. Look on in the rest of that verse. Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. So, after the curse, Adam has to eat in sorrow. That means he has to work so hard that it's sorrowful. The ground was cursed. Before Adam's sin, it would have been really nice to be a farmer. You wouldn't even have to till the ground. I bet you just throw a seed at it, and then, you could do whatever Brother Winford does already right now. Just kind of throw seeds in the backyard, and they come up the most beautiful things you've ever seen, right? Adam's duty before the fall was to dress it and to keep it. That garden, he had to dress it. That means prepare it to be eaten, and keep it, to protect it, to guard it, to take care of it. Those two things, that's easy. You can dress and keep standing up. Walk around, this is not hard work. Dressing the fruit and eating the fruit and keeping the fruit, easy peasy. Afterwards, look at what he says. Verse 18, thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return to the ground. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. I'm looking for a word there that I might have overlooked. I've totally forgotten where I'm going there, or have mistyped something. Okay, so cursed is the ground. After Adam sins, the ground gets cursed. Not good. Verse 18. After Adam sins, we get thorns and thistles. You ever wrestle with a thorn, a briar, a thistle? Thank Adam. Thank Eve. Before Adam and Eve sinned, you could have gardened and run through the woods all day with your eyes closed and probably not gotten hurt. Right now, you can hardly walk 6 feet in the woods without coming home with arms that look like an angry cat got a hold of you. Those briars are mean. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. What were they eating before? Fruit from the tree. You know what? I would like to chew on a peach and a strawberry and an apple all day rather than parsley and herbs of the field, basil and lettuce and spinach. And, you know, those things are all right, but you put in front of me a handful of spinach and a handful of peaches, I'm going to take the peaches. I like fruit. A part of the curse was now you got to eat herbs of the field. And they were already food to him, but I think based on this verse, he might not have been allowed to eat fruit anymore because God kicked him out of that garden. I don't know. What I do know is that before the fall, Adam freely got food that God prepared for him. After the fall, Adam had to work for his food, and he had to sweat, and he had to work through thorns, and he had to till the ground. And he had to really work to make that food come out of the ground, and he had to do it in sorrow and in sweat. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread. Verse 19. Till thou return unto the ground. For out of it wast thou taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt thou return. You ever start thinking high of yourself? If you ever start thinking you're really something special, or you're really smart, you're doing good in school, and you think, man, I'm doing great. Or you're doing good at your job, and you think I'm doing great. Or you get to retire, and you think, man, you know, God's been so good to me. I must be something, you know. Don't cross that line into pride. Remember always that what you are and what I am is dust. That stuff that just flew off right there. Just dust. That's what we came from. And when you and I die, that's what we're going to. Don't start thinking too highly of yourself because we are dust. Look at Genesis 18:27. Take a note from Abraham right here. Genesis 18:27. He says, and Abraham answered, talking to the Lord, and said, behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. You know, he's about to make a request to God, and he makes sure that he's humble. He reminds himself and he reminds God, I'm talking to you, Lord, but I know that I'm nothing special. I'm dust and ashes. Remember that. When you wake up in the morning, instead of saying your morning affirmations that Instagram told you to do, you know, if you get on Instagram or Facebook, there'll be some lady on there who will tell you when you wake up, you need to look in the mirror and go, I am beautiful. I am lovely. I am strong. I am powerful. I will make a difference in this world. Those are called affirmations, and they'll tell you to do those today. What you should do instead, maybe, is wake up and go, I am dust and ashes. When I die, I'm going to go back to the dirt. I'm going to serve the Lord today. You know, that'd be a better way to wake up, to remind yourself that you aren't special. Look at verse 20. And Adam called his wife's name Eve. Before this, Eve doesn't show up. And if you look up the word Eve, Eve is only used 4 times in the whole Bible. And God never calls her Eve. Adam calls her Eve. The Bible says, and God called their name Adam. Just like today, my wife, her last name is my last name. Your wife's last name is your last name. A woman doesn't have a name of her own. I know somebody who is a feminist. She's about my age. She's working through medical school. And she's very proud that she's a woman, that she's accomplished what she's accomplished. And let's say her last name is Smith. It's not. But let's say her last name is Smith. And she said this, even if I get married when I'm a doctor, I am not going by my husband's last name. I'm going to be Dr. Smith. I earned this. Dr. Smith earned this. And she's trying to prove, you know, some man doesn't get my last name, doesn't get to put doctor in front of his name. You know, the person she marries doesn't get her name. You know, what she doesn't realize is that she's using her grandpa and her father's name It's still a man's name. A man's name is what a woman has. If you're a woman in here, you have a man's name. Your last name is a man's name. There's that old song, it's a man's world. Well, yeah, that's how God set it up. What are you going to do about it? Serve the Lord. Earn rewards in heaven. Go home. That doesn't matter. Don't try to change the world. You're not going to anyway, and you'll be against God when you try. Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins. You say, why did he have to make them coats? Answer?
Because they were naked.
Because they were naked. They had just sinned in the garden. They knew they were naked, and now they needed a covering. So they were naked and filthy. What did they need to cover them? Coats of skins, right? Coats of what?
Skins.
What are skins?
Animal.
Animal skins. So, how did God get animal skins?
Killed them.
Probably. It doesn't say it, but I'll bet you God cut some skins off of some animals to make coats for Adam and Eve. When God did that, he painted a picture that lasted for thousands of years. Here's the picture. When there is sin to be covered, blood has to be shed. Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission. That's what the Bible says. Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission. Sin can't be covered unless blood is shed. And then we see, later on, Adam and Eve have a son named Abel and his brother Cain. And Abel brings a sacrifice to God of the flock, a sheep. And he kills the sheep. You say, why in the world would he do that? God didn't tell Abel to kill a sheep. Not that we know of. He didn't say, Abel, you have to kill sheep. But what Abel knew was, when God wanted to show my mommy and daddy that their sins needed to be forgiven, he shed blood. So I'm going to shed blood of the best of my flock to show God that I want my sins covered. Ever since that time, ever since Adam and Eve fell, blood has had to be shed to cover sins. In the Old Testament law, every single day, all day, the Old Testament priests, you could probably rename an Old Testament priest to an Old Testament butcher. What they were doing all day long was cutting animals and shedding their blood. And cutting out their guts and separating the fat and the caul above the liver, whatever in the world that is, and doing all this stuff with these bloody animals. And, they had a laver where they had to wash their hands. You say, why'd they have to wash their hands? Have you ever tried to get blood off your hands after skinning a deer? It's not easy. It's a bloody religion. You say, why in the world would God require so much blood? Because sin is really dirty, and it requires shed blood to cover it. And that blood that bulls and goats would shed only covered it for a little bit. They had to come back tomorrow or the next day or the next year in order to cover their sins with that blood. Now we know that finally a perfect lamb came and his blood was shed. His name was Jesus Christ. He shed his blood that could cover all the sins of the whole world. You say, why could his blood cover it? Two reasons. One, he is God. Two, he is perfect.
Amen.
He offered himself willfully as a sacrifice for you and for me. And all we have to do is trust in him. Thankfully, we don't have to wake up and slaughter one of our animals tomorrow as a sacrifice to God, because Jesus Christ allowed his son to be the slaughtered, butchered sacrifice for you and for me. Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
But that blood sacrifice started right here. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothed them. And that verse in Hebrews is Hebrews 9:22, if you want to write it down. It says, without shedding of blood is no remission. I think that one gets misquoted an awful lot. I'm going to turn to it. Hebrews 9:22. I always wanted to say, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins. And that's not what it says.
Doesn't it appear in there a couple times? I thought it was another place for it.
It might.
One says that, I think. I'm looking at the thing here. Shedding of blood.
Hebrews 9:22 says, and almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission, period. And Hebrews 10:18 says, now where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin. But nowhere does it say, without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. So I'm trying to fix my brain on that. Genesis 3:22. Here we go. And the Lord God said, behold, the man has become as one of us. Who's God talking to? Behold, the man has become as one of us.
Jesus and
Us.
the Holy Spirit.
His name wasn't Jesus yet, but the Word and the Holy Spirit. These three are one. When in Genesis 1:28, when God decides to create man, he says, and God said, this is 1:26, let us, who's God talking to? Himself. So why does he say us? Because God is not just one person, he's three persons. The Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. Let us, three, make man in our image. And then over here in Genesis 3, he says, behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Look back there where it says to know good and evil. You remember that Satan told Eve that right there in verse 5. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And we talked about that truth that God doesn't want you to know everything about the evil. God wants you to know good, but he doesn't want you to know evil. Adam and Eve were just like sinless little babies. They were just like children who don't know right from wrong yet, because they had never seen evil. They didn't know what it was to do wrong. They were just walking around innocent and free without clothes on. You say, why? There was no such thing as sin to them. It didn't exist. It was just righteousness. It was just perfection in a wonderful garden, eating wonderful fruit, hanging out with your wife and hanging out with a zebra, and all kinds of fun stuff. But after they fell, they got this knowledge. You know, I haven't gotten to this point yet with my son. It'll be years. But there comes a point in every child's life where they learn right from wrong. There's a time where they don't really know the difference. All they know is, I'm hungry, I'm going to cry. Ah, feed me. Then comes a point when, mom starts saying, don't do that. And they know, I'm not supposed to do that, but I think it's cute, so I'm going to smile and do it anyway. Right there, they knew, I shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway. Mom doesn't want me to do that. They know it's wrong, but they do it anyway. Then they gain the knowledge of evil. God doesn't want people to have the knowledge of evil at this point. Deuteronomy 1:39 says, moreover, your little ones, which ye said should be a prey, and your children, which in that day had no knowledge between good and evil, they shall go in thither, and unto them will I give it, and they shall possess it.
What was your reference, brother?
Deuteronomy 1:39. There's that old song, 12 men went to spy out Canaan. 10 were bad and 2 were good. Joshua sent 10 bad spies into Canaan and 2 good spies into Canaan. And they all came back, and the 10 bad spies said, they will slaughter us. Even though God had promised, I will deliver it to you. The 10 bad spies said, no. The 2 good spies, Joshua and Caleb, said, we can do it. God said we can do it, so we can do it. The 10 bad spies convinced all of Israel not to go. And the punishment was, you're going to wander for 40 years, and every single one of you over the age of 20 is going to die in the wilderness. And then the rest of you can go in. Plus Joshua and Caleb. Why 20? The rule was 20 years and under are allowed to go in free. You say, why? This verse right here. God considered anyone who is 20 years and younger to have no knowledge between good and evil. Now, I don't know if it's still fixed at that age right now. I kind of doubt it. At 18 years old, I definitely knew right from wrong. I think God holds you accountable well before you're 20 years old. But that's the principle right there, that there comes a time in someone's life where before that time, God considers them just innocent. They don't know right from wrong. If a baby is aborted, I don't believe it goes to hell for having original sin in its heart, like a Catholic believes. Catholics believe that if you don't get that christening and anointment right when you're born, and some priest doesn't put some dirty water on your face, that you're going to die and go to hell as a baby. It's just not true. Calvinists believe, that if a baby is not predestined, there were 60 million plus babies aborted in the United States in the last 50 years. 60 million children were killed. 60 million children were killed. 10 times worse than the Holocaust in the United States, and we're still clapping about it today.
Yeah.
We pass bills in Congress, and in Congress they get up and say, yay, women's rights. And then they turn around and go, you Nazi. Really? Who's acting like a Nazi? Because you've killed 60 million people. Calvinists believe that only those who were predestined to go to heaven will. So, I don't know how many of those 60 million say God predestinates half of people to go to heaven. Well, 30 million of those babies, according to a Calvinist, went to hell. That's crazy. That's nonsense, because there comes a point in a child's life when he learns right from wrong. But until then, he is innocent. He is not responsible for his sins, and he will not go to hell if he dies. The Lord said, "Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil." They did know good, but they didn't know evil. "And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever, therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground." There it is. That's what I was looking for earlier. "To till the ground from whence he was taken." So God kicks Adam out of the Garden of Eden, right? He used to be in this wonderful, beautiful garden, and remember, Adam could kind of just walk around and dress the garden and keep the garden. It was easy. All of his work was above ground. Now he gets kicked out of the garden, and what does he have to do? Till the ground. And I don't know if you've ever had to deal with a plow, but try to plow without an ox or a tractor. It's not easy work. Tilling ground is not easy work. If you've got a rototiller, maybe it's a little easier, but without a rototiller or without a cow or a horse or metal, I mean, Adam, I don't know what he was digging with. Maybe a stick. I don't know. All I know is his job got a whole lot harder. He had to work in the ground. It's dirty work. Therefore, the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. Verse 24. "So he drove out the man," which is really a shame. That's a sad picture. Adam had communion with God in this garden. They got to walk together in the cool of the day. They got to talk to one another, God and Adam. And now, because of Adam's sin, you know what God has to do? Get on out of here. Get, go, get. But I want to stay. Go, get out. You know, can you imagine? Adam was God's son, right? The book of Luke says Adam was the son of God. Can you imagine having to tell your son, look, I gave you a chance and you did wrong. Now go, get out. I have friends in California whose daughter, when she was 20 years old, started talking to a guy who was a Mormon. And then she went a little farther and got engaged to this guy who was a Mormon. And the whole time her parents were saying, he doesn't believe the same thing as you about Jesus Christ. You shouldn't marry this guy. He's a Mormon. And she was in love. So she decided to do it anyway. And her parents wouldn't even go to the wedding. You know why? Because we're not going to condone or be a part of a wedding of our Christian daughter to a Mormon. You say, that's harsh. Dad wouldn't go to his own daughter's wedding? God kicked his own son out of the garden for sin. He went through it. God turned his own back on his son on the cross because of what? The sin that he took on him. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims. If you remember what we looked at in the book of Ezekiel, you can look at Ezekiel chapter 1 and Ezekiel chapter 10, and the description of a cherubim is terrifying. They have They have 4 faces on their head. They're big. They have eyes all around them. They're terrifying. They could slaughter you just like that. They could slaughter 50,000 men just like that. God put these cherubims at the east of the garden. And a flaming sword which turned every way. I don't know what exactly that looked like, but it looked an awful lot like a flaming sword that turned every way. Something that I wouldn't walk up to and go, I think I can take it on. No. Imagine you're walking through the woods and you come upon a floating sword that's just turning all around and it's on fire. You have a nice day. I'm going back to Frogtown. A flaming sword which turned every way. You say, why in the world did God put cherubims, his personal secret service, and a flaming sword? Right there, the last words, to keep the way of the tree of life. God wanted to keep Adam away from that tree that would make him live forever. And here's a question right here. If God loved Adam, why in the world wouldn't he want him to live forever? What do you think? Why wouldn't God want Adam to eat of the tree? He would live forever. Why is that a bad thing? Think about it. Wouldn't you want your son to live forever? Here's why. Adam now had sin on him. Adam was just as good as the devil. If Adam took part of that tree, he'd live forever. He'd never die. And he'd be just like the devil walking around on the earth, sinful and against God. I believe that God, in keeping Adam from the tree, was giving him a chance, giving him a shot at redemption. I don't know if Adam ever got right. But what I do know is God doesn't want imperfect people taking part of his tree, because he puts that tree again in New Jerusalem. When we read in Revelation chapter 21 and 22, New Jerusalem has a river, and on either side of the river is the tree of life. And people who take part of the tree of life get to live forever in eternity, in the future. But no unclean thing or no unclean person gets to enter into that city and take part of the tree. So, for whatever reason, God does not want evil people taking part of that perfect tree of life. He doesn't want evil people living forever in that evil flesh. That's a mercy. I would rather die and get a chance to go to heaven than live forever on this earth with sin. I'm only 25 years old, and I'm about ready to be done dealing with the sin in this body. And I'm sure you are too, if you even pay attention. Pastor just mentioned on Wednesday, you ought to pay attention. If you're paying attention at all, you know that there's a spiritual battle going on. There is something going on every day where your flesh warreth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh, and these twain are contrary the one to the other. Your flesh and your spirit are constantly in a battle, saying, do right, do wrong, do right, do wrong, do right, do wrong. If you've watched Emperor's New Groove, see a little an angel and devil on his shoulder. Do right, do wrong. I would rather die so that I can have a chance to go to heaven, like God has given me. He's given me Jesus Christ. Thank the Lord. So now when I die, I know I get to go to heaven. I would rather have that, where I have to face death but go to heaven, than live forever having to deal with this stupid, rotten flesh. People in the world, the lost world, I'm sorry, I'm going to spend about one more minute preaching. People, in a stupid way, people in the lost world are so focused on living forever. Elon Musk, I wanted to call him Elon Mars. Elon Musk is trying to get to Mars so that the humankind can be saved from whatever problems we've got on the earth today. He wants man to be able to live longer. People in science labs right now are trying to work on clones, and I forgot the name of it, but there's a program right now that's to make all the cells in your body younger every day instead of older, so that if you're 40, you could, take this pill or whatever, and then you wouldn't get older. You just stay 40 or whatever. Maybe they can do it. I don't know. When they were building the Tower of Babel, God said they can do anything they set their mind to. Maybe they'll get there where they can make your life longer. Maybe they'll get there where a man can live 900 years again. I don't want it. I'd rather go to heaven. I'm tired of this world. I'm sick of it. And here really soon, Jesus Christ is going to come clean it up. And that's about the only thing, the only hope that people have of living a fulfilling eternal life is in Jesus Christ. That's Genesis chapter 3. Next time, Lord willing, we'll get into Genesis chapter 4. Does anybody have any questions about Genesis 3? Any questions about Adam and Eve sinning, the punishment God gave them, the curse on the ground? As far as I know, that curse is still alive today. I still see thorns and thistles around. I still have to work hard. Anytime I want to plant something or work in the ground, I run into rocks with my shovel. I'm trying to dig a trench right now for a water line. It's not easy. It happens to be through a gravel driveway, so that makes it worse. It's hard. It's hard work. No questions? Okay, great. Thanks for coming tonight. The Lord bless you for listening. I hope the word has a good effect on you. Got anything?
Just a reminder, of course, on Sunday school at 10 a.m. And then our worship service will begin at